All right, thank you for coming back and being here on time and going to go. What I want to do right now is to show you the C2C video. And C2C is planting churches, changing lives. It's really, God is doing some awesome things through C2C. And so I asked if I could show the video, the little promo. Some of you may have already seen it, others have not, but nonetheless, I want to take this time and let you see this and really enjoy what God is doing in the midst of all of Canada and bringing these lives together, planting churches, changing lives, and seeing Him do the miraculous. So watch this video from. So Father, we pray that you will bring laborers into your field. Bring planners, bring families together that will want to reach their neighborhoods, their communities, this great nation. Cause them in their hearts to see you and to follow your mission. Not to their own mission, but your mission. So bring forth laborers into your field. And may you call them to make a difference for eternity. Let me pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So what are we going to coach for? We're in chapter number 6, to get you back into place. Coaching leaders. How are we going to do this? And who's it for? So the way I envisioned coaching was not just a denominational leader, a regional leader, to a church planner, for instance. That works, and that's fine. But I wanted this to be beyond that. And so even to the depths of down to the planter, the pastor, to elders, to women ministry, all the way down even to the way that you would coach and train and develop your own children. So sincerely, this is the way that I have helped develop my 2 sons, is through a coaching. In fact, my 20-year-old, he was 20 at the time, he came into my bedroom. It was about 11:30. They was just gearing up, he's in college. And so he comes flying in. He's always welcome anytime. And he comes in, of course he knocked, but he comes flying in. He sits down in a chair next to me and he says, "All right, coach me." And that was the terminology used. It was basically saying, don't tell me what to do. I'm not looking for advice here. I'm looking to interact in here. I want to make a decision, pretty serious decision. But he needed that. And that's the way that we've helped to develop them, is kind of see them, help them pull out. So the tools that I'm sharing with you, the principles that we're sharing, can be applied in all relationships, all the way down, clear across. Quite frankly, I thought about Haiti, because we were looking to do some work down in Haiti, French Creole speaking. So this couldn't be language oriented. I thought about London, a post-Christian international community. I thought about Dallas, Texas, very Christian oriented, a lot of churches, over-churched, if you will, in the United States, and tried to think, will it work in all of those settings? And so I didn't want it to be a geographical or cultural kind of a piece. And what we pulled in to develop was something that was very ancient, and the ideas of what it would mean to shepherd and care for other people. And so that was kind of the goal. So it's pretty extensive how it goes about. We even chose the publisher on the basis of how wide it was. And we had a couple of offers, and one had a more narrow focus into the community. But Zondervan is very wide, and we're very appealing to women in ministry and pulling outside even those walls, those very narrow walls. So think about, how can we apply this? Where does this go? When I train pastors, particularly, they'll say, "Hey, can this work? Could you train us to do it in a small group settings?" And I said, well, the answer is no and yes. Yes, it applies to small group. No, I won't do it. You do it. It's really what you have in front of you right here. This is the goal, is like, take this and you can train at your level. Deciding who to coach. So Jesus chose Barnabas chose, Paul chose. You're going to have to choose at some point. You can't coach everybody, right? So you're going to have to make a choice on where you go, what you're going to do, who am I looking for. So you have to decide, who should I coach? And of course, you want to be open to the Spirit, what He's leading. Is there a person, a group of people maybe I need to pour my lives into? I'm always coaching church planters at some level. I coach a lot of leaders, but I always coach church planters. In fact, a guy hit me up just recently. We engaged on the phone while I'm traveling one day, and he's a church planter just getting started. And I offered to coach him. I just said, pray about it. I'll pray about it. Hit me up later. But I mean, this is a guy starting. I hardly even know him. And he's just he's anxious for that. But I want to be down there at that level. I want to be all the way where the front lines, if you will, of what's taking place in the world. Not just up here in the ivory tower. So who's God leading you? Think about it. Read 2 Timothy 2:2 and then answer this question. And you can fill it out in your book. You then, my child, be strengthened by the grace that's in Christ Jesus. What you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. How can this inform us who to coach? In the book, it's on page 36 if you're trying to find your place. How can 2 Timothy 2:2 inform us who to coach? So talk about that at your table. So what did you discover? Who is it you're to coach? Give me some input. What did you come up with there? How does this inform us who to coach? This passage in 2 Timothy.
Other leaders, other people.
Looking for other leaders, okay. What else?
Men who are not only able but willing to commit to teaching others.
Okay, so able and willing to teach others. Good.
To look for potential.
Okay, looking for potential in somebody. Maybe.
To be able to teach, not necessarily can teach now, but.
All right, so as a part of the development process, you can help spur them on, move them to that place where they could do that. Good.
Maybe a little too simple, but to precursor that people are faithful. You know, if you have some leaders that are sometimes more faithful than others, that you want to draw from. So faithfulness is probably the beginning of all things.
Sure, yeah. You're looking for people who are faithful, who then you can pour into and coach. And you want to invest in people, and there's times when maybe you should not coach someone. And perhaps you started a relationship with someone and shouldn't continue. Really? They may not be faithful and following through. They may kind of given up. And so you have a limited amount of time that you can pour into people at that level. And it's okay to say, perhaps you're not ready right now. I would love to revisit this later. But right now, it just doesn't appear that you're ready. And that's okay. It's okay to say that and to move on because you want to invest. You want to take what God has given to you and invest it. And listen, there's nothing wrong with saying, this is not, you don't necessarily say this to the other person, but this is not being faithful with what God has given to me to do, to invest for the kingdom. Now, the stewards were given talents, placed into and given to him, said, I'll come back at a certain day. And after a long time, the steward came back and said, give me an account of what you've done with my talents. So God has given to us gifts, skills, abilities. He's asked us to invest those, not to just pour them into the ground and say, well, this person was terrible, would never follow through. I tried, Lord, and so then I gave up. And that person with the one talent, he said, oh, that's not good. It's not acceptable. I think every leader can coach 4 people, though. And this is the kind of thing you can think about it. You could coach 4 people. This is by coaching them twice a month. Statistics will give to you that people will be developed and grow and be strengthened and grow in their gospel walk after being mentored or coached. Simply the statistics are too alarming to just ignore. You can coach 4 people by doing it twice a month. person 1 and 2 for an hour each, first week. You say you can read it yourself. Basically, you're just committing 2 hours a week to invest in 4 lives. If you did it once a month, you do 8 people with those 2 hours. And all of us have wasted 2 hours probably this week at some point. It just takes some intentionality to go like, all right, can we meet together? Can we, can we spend some time together and pour it into another person? Just invest it. Take some time, get some intentionality about it. So what do you do during a coaching session? Here's what Tom and I came up with is like, this is what takes place during this coaching session. What's taking place up there? What is it? Oh, so, yeah, 15 for women, yes. I'm sorry, but that's true, right? I mean, that's so true. So we're going to connect. First thing we do is connect, and then you want to review, find the objective, strategy, supplication, spirit. Nothing special about this. But so this is what you do when you sit down with others. And this would be kind of the suggested time frame that you take part in. How long would you be able to do this? And I spell this completely out in detail on page number 37. So that's all. I see some of you writing it down, but that's all spelled out precisely. And women, it's going to take longer. But you don't want to spend, make this a marathon. Like, man, we met for 3.5 hours. At some point you go to law of diminishing returns. It's not going to be as productive. You can go statistics are, you go about 90 minutes. You can go 90 minutes with a topic before you need a break. How have we structured this training? No more than 90 minutes at a time. Nice substantial break. Another 90 minutes. Nice break. You can't go longer. Statistically, you can't go longer than that. So I would suggest don't go longer than an hour and a half, girls. Guys will go I've never been on the phone an hour and a half ever, combined. I've not been that long. So how do you do it? You can do it face to face. You can do it via telephone. You can do it via Skype or GoToMeeting. Other venues they'll do this. You really can be effective with this. So connecting, we'll explain this back later, but this is the flow of it. You're going to connect with them, see where they are, how things been going, figure out which direction you want to go, and then start taking the strategy and steps. And you can see that percentage-wise, we're going to spend more time with figuring out, okay, how do we navigate where you want to go? Not going to spend a lot of time just what do you want to talk about? I don't know, what do you want to talk about? It's like that, where do you want to eat? I don't know, wherever you want to eat. And then you make a suggestion and they don't want to eat there. So that it just feels like that unless you figure out where you're going to go and then just start getting there. Take off. So as you're trying to decide who you're going to coach, and we'll revisit this, as you decide who you're going to coach, a couple of never-evers. Don't coach a person of the opposite gender. Just don't do it unless it's your wife or your sister or your brother. I'd like to hear how it goes with the wife, though, by the way. Please email me. Never expect you'll not form that emotional bond with another person if you're shepherding and caring for them. And I had a couple of other spaces, so I just added a couple. Never spit in the wind and never wear a sweater vest to preach. Just don't take it personal, just ideas. Whatever. When I was in California, some of these times I've done it, never wear a Hawaiian shirt. Probably should say ever, but never wear a Hawaiian shirt to preach in. And I was going to Southern California. Now there's a certain pastor down there with a pretty substantial church down there. So I don't want to look like I'm saying about this guy here. And so I changed it to sweater vest. So I did this thing in Southern California. I said, never wear a sweater vest. And the whole group just cracked up. And I go, it's not that funny, I know. So tell me the backstory. And what they said was they had a church planter who always wore a sweater vest when he preached. Always. They're getting ready to send him off to go be the planter. This was his final sending Sunday. And he's going to preach. So, past behavior, is a predictor of future behavior. They know he's going to wear a sweater vest to preach in. So everybody that particular Sunday wears a sweater vest. Everybody, little kids, everybody has a sweater vest. You can imagine being a visitor in that church. You come walking in, come on, hey, we're going to come to this new. Oh, don't drink the coffee, the Kool-Aid. We're not staying. Don't eat the cookies, kids. We're not staying here. I don't know what happened. But what a great crack up when he walked in. So here's some applications for coaching. Where would it go? Coach leaders. Look for leaders that you can coach and invest in. You can do a formal discipleship. You say, well, I'd like to disciple a person. You could do it in this format of coaching, walking through a content of material that you maybe want to have them walk through. You can mentor them in a specific skill like a church planter or a small group leader or a women's ministry director or whatever you want to do, you can walk people through in a skill set. You can supervise. Some people think you can't. I happen to love that aspect of supervising another person through this way of coaching, at least entering into this coaching relationship where you can have this great relationship with them. You can be honest, they can be honest with you, and you can live that biblical relationship. I do couples coaching. I want to develop this a little bit further with my wife and I, just coaching couples in ministry. And coming in and talking about some of the distinctives. In fact, at the afternoon tomorrow, we're going to walk through what it would look like to coach women and couples in ministry and just kind of explore that whole idea. You can do leadership development. You can do whatever your context is. Think about leaders to make, disciples to make, people I want to develop, people I want to encourage and strengthen. It's pretty wide open. Here are ways to coach, and we're going to practice this in a moment. So we're going to practice the third one. The first way is kind of the bread and butter, is the one-on-one. This is by far the most traditional, the most effective. It's just kind of a one-on-one coaching relationship that you have with somebody. The advantages of this is you can dig into a person's life, and it's real specific. So you're digging into that person's life, and you're helping them with their issues real specifically. And there's no one else listening in. So that whole confidentiality thing is really between you and that other person. And you can dig down deep and figure out things and kind of clean out some stuff, repent and confess, and whatever is necessary for that person to see some gospel transformation take part in their life. So that's a one-on-one. That's pretty basic. The mentor role is where you have someone who is advanced. He's ahead of. So we did a pastor's training program, and we brought in 12 church planters. And there were 4 of us who were kind of leading this. So we split it up into 3s, and I took a group of 3, etc. And this is exactly how we did it. So every time they came in from all over North America, and they showed up, and here we were, and we just stopped with them one-on-one. So let's say you 3, and I would just meet, and we would talk to this just one person for about 20 minutes. Okay, what are you dealing with? What's happening? What are some challenges you're having? How do you want to accomplish that, etc.? While these 2 are listening in, they're not just dozing off or checking their Facebook. They're listening in. They're not engaged in the conversation. They're listening intently, maybe even taking some notes. And then second, and then third. This person would be ahead of these others, seen more as a mentor. Now, where this only works is if these 3 are all kind of peers, or at least learning at the same level. Those that could be all small group leaders, all church planters, whatever they're doing, that they're all doing the same. Otherwise, if I'm talking to you about worship ministry, and then talking to you about children's ministry, and then talking to you about dog ministry, I don't know, it doesn't apply, then it becomes like, that's a waste of my time. 40 minutes of it is a waste of my time. So that's where it works really best. The third one is what we call team, and so this is powerful. Again, you have 3 people at the same level or have submitted themselves to the same level. So there could be somebody who's ahead, maybe even appointed as a director or the pastor or, whatever the situation is, but they have submitted themselves to be in this peer relationship. And now we're going to practice this in a moment, so pay attention. The first person is coached by the other two, similar to what we did earlier, but they're coached in this way. So we're going back and forth asking. Where this is valuable is perspective. It's also valuable to learn how to coach because you're going like, that's a great question. I'm going to remember that. It also gives you a chance to reflect back and go pull back because you're not just on. If it's just you, and we're doing our thing, we're not given time to think. I'm either talking, and by the way, when you're coaching, you're not doing a lot of talking. You're doing a lot of listening to the tune of about 90%. The talking would be, let me see if I understood what you said, or asking next question. If it's not, then you're into advisor, counselor, teacher mode. And sometimes that's where they are. So it's about 90% you're listening to. So I'm listening to what he has to say, and I'm listening real closely, and we'll practice that too, because you all need practice. I know you need practice. And you're listening to what's going on, or you're asking the next question. So you don't have time to reflect. This allows you to reflect, stop, take a breath. So there's no pressure. That's why we're doing it here at this juncture, okay? So we're going to break up here in just a moment. So that's why you do it that one way. So there's one person being coached, two coaches, and then you switch, and someone else is being coached, and the other two coach, and you go around. So this is a very powerful way to learn in cohorts, in groups of people that are trying to learn together at the same level. This can be done among elders, among small group leaders, women's ministry leaders, families in ministry. It can be, whatever level can work in, as long as they're at the close to similar level. Okay? So let's do this. Let's practice this. And you need to, some of you lost your friends, but need to pull in somewhere. And let's appoint one person to be the one being coached and two people coaching. And we'll just do one round. So you all won't get a chance to all try, but I want you to all to learn. So I'm going to give you a chance to speak into it, to do this exercise, and then stop. I'll stop you and say, okay, reflect on it to each other. In other words, what you said here was really helpful or really confusing or whatever the situation was that would be to help them to become a better coach. That's the goal. We're not trying to fix the person being coached right now. That's not the goal. The goal is to learn how to coach. So we're going to engage in that process right now. You will ask this question: what is the biggest challenge you're facing in your job? Now, say, well, I don't have a job, I don't have work, whatever. Or what your family, you name it. The idea is not the answer so much as to learn how to do the exercise. Okay? Does it make sense? So what questions are you going to ask? How much are you going to talk? If you get into lecture mode, you're not coaching. Counselor mode, advising mode, you start steering this thing and pulling it away and go like, I know where you need to go. So think of coaching this way. Think of coaching not necessarily in the back seat of this road trip you're going to take. Just saying, where are you going? Do you like to go here? Certainly not in the driver's seat. Like, move over, I'll get us there. But you want to be kind of in the navigator's seat, helping them to think through, okay? If you want to go here, here are 2 or 3 ways you could maybe go. What's the best way to go? All right, so I'll help you. We'll help navigate that direction. Does that make sense? So you're not completely hands-off, but you're definitely not hands-on. It's kind of that middle space right there where you're helping to guide them. They've determined, but you've helped guide that. In true coaching is completely non-directive. we'll give you a little leeway. And he'll give it by illustration. A pastor had a list of things he wanted to talk about. And you got to find one. That you can't go all five. So I said, well, which one of these would you like to talk about? And he said, I want to talk about how to start and write a book. Because that was like, he really wanted to do that. By the way, here's just off the cuff. Don't write a book just for a book. Write a book out of ministry. Just a thought. Write it because it's going to help people. Write it as you're serving your local context, you go like, this could probably help someone else. Then publish it. But just to sit down and go, I'm going to write a book to be an author, that's not time well spent, I don't think, unless you're super gifted. But pour into their lives. True coaching would be like not directing their direction. So this guy said, I want to write a book. I said, that would be good, and I'd love to hear what you have to say concerning that. But it seems as though you need to probably process whether or not you're going to stay at that local church or not. That was one of his questions. Decide if I'm going to stay here or if I'm going to leave. I said, now look over the list and tell me, where does that not affect those other four? And he said, wow, you're right. Would you like to talk about that? Yes. So I'm not strong-arming him, but it's okay to go, yeah, maybe you should look at this. It'd be like walking into a doctor's office and saying, they're looking for the chief concern or what they call a chief complaint. And you say, well, my knee is really bothering me. I said, oh, that's interesting that you've never had that before. What other symptoms are you experiencing? Because they're looking for other reasons. I said, I don't know, my heart, my left arm's numb and my heart, what doctors are going to go, well, you said knee first. We're going to go with knee. Right? A good doctor would say, time out. We need to take care of what's most critical. So you have a little leeway. That's where I'm talking about. You're not going to strong arm this thing, and it's going to be the exception to the rule. But at times you can help them to steer a direction where it would be most helpful for them. Does it make sense to you? So practice this. What is the biggest challenge you're facing in your life? Listen, ask questions, figure out, and together coach this through, and then debrief. Okay? I'll give you about 10 minutes or so to do this. All right, how'd it go? How's that going? Still going. Give me some feedback on how that went. You had awesome coaches, okay? Did you get saved? Did you become a Christian? Yeah. What was that like? How'd that work? It's what?
It was good conversation. It was clarifying.
Okay. But was there some traction, some movement then? Or was it just, we're sitting drinking coffee and...
No, there was some.
Yeah. Well, now you were ganged up by two women.
No, we were coaching her.
So I'm so sorry. What else?
Conversation was helpful. The questions that were asked were really helpful, clarifying and working through the issue. These are smart people.
Yeah, they were telling me that earlier. How smart they were. So it was helpful. How was it helpful?
The biggest thing was it made me verbalize some of the things to do with the issue that I hadn't verbalized well before.
So they helped you, I'm doing it for video purposes, but they helped you to verbalize what you hadn't verbalized before and was very helpful, get some traction on it. Yeah. Would that be something that you could have done on your own?
Only parts of it, not all of it.
Okay. So the interaction and the intentionality for this process was helpful for you. Yeah.
Yep.
Good. What else?
As a coach with another coach, it held me more accountable to ask the right kind of questions rather than just saying, stop it.
Yeah. So it helped to hone your coaching skills because you had somebody else holding you accountable, and yeah, rather than just you could lecture them or smack them on the head, or yeah. You can smack him later.
Having another coach also helped to keep me from trying to guide the conversation, right? Because they would jump in with their questions, so I couldn't necessarily, unwittingly steer the conversation where I wanted to. And so it kept things honest.
Okay, good. So as having another coach nearby who's offering questions, you're going to keep from being real directive and trying to take it off into some of the, yeah, good.
What I found helpful being coached is that the three of us were all involved in the same ministry at church. And so as I was sharing what I've been struggling with, they, first of all, knew what I was talking about, but they also could say, okay, so what can we actually do to fix this? What can we take off your plate? What can we change? And it's realistic because they're part of it. And so that was helpful.
Yeah.
We actually had a plan.
So real ministry and real strategy was grown out of just that little bit of time. I mean, we spent 15 minutes together. I mean, think about it. Maybe what took place in your midst, 15 minutes, what could take place. Imagine going 45 now, or doing this on a regular basis, how beneficial it could be if you just be a little bit more intentional.
I think it's very freeing for the questioner not to have to provide solutions.
Okay, so and that is the beauty of coaching. You don't have to provide the solutions. You have to help them to figure out the direction they need to go and pull that out. You can surround it with the good news, the gospel, and ask those kinds of questions that we're going to help to guard it from going off in another direction. Because it can be, you can allow coaching to be just simply, well, I don't agree with this, but I got to go with it anyway. And you're not going to agree with everything, don't get me wrong. But I mean, it's not going to go like, I want to figure out how I'm going to deceive my mother concerning her inheritance or whatever. I mean, you're not going to be coached on that. There's sometimes you got to let's draw the line. Let me help redirect that. Let me help you go into another direction. It's going to be really helpful. And let's talk about honesty. So think about who you can coach. If you want to do the certification, we're asking you to do 2 people over the course, 5 sessions each, whereby then I'll submit to you a document, an online form. You ask them to fill in how well you did. Nobody has to do this, but this is just a service to you if you want to go about that and become certified. So you just send that document to those 2 people. Contextually, I'm saying, looking at 4 to 6 people. If you want to be a part of this, you can do 2. You have to do 2 in order to follow through. But there may be 4 people that you can coach. Who are they? Who's the Spirit leading? Where do you think you should go with this? You might just take a moment there and think about, right away you're going to think about a couple, 2 or 3. Who could I coach? So jot a couple names down, just on your own. You're not talking among each other about this. As you're thinking through that, you say, I don't know if I want, how do you start? How do you ask somebody, hey, do you want me to coach you? It'll make your life awesome. There's just a little bit of a, how do you do that? How do you approach somebody? And here's what I found. Young people are waiting for the older people to ask them. The older people are waiting for the younger people to ask them to coach them. And so you have this, nobody's asking because we're missing. And all you have to do is just open yourself up and say, would you coach me? Or you can say it this way. If you're the coach, you can say, I'm going through a church coach training, and would you help me to learn how to coach by letting me coach you for 5 sessions? So you're kind of going like, well, sure, I know you need a lot of help. And then what will happen is you're going to be able to really coach and get them, and they go like, man, this is awesome. And the traction grows from there. People are going to hear about it. Hey, Glenn, would you coach me? Would you be that guy? And you're going to learn what that looks like. And they're going to hear about it, and there's more people going to be part of that. You're going to have to learn to discern at that point. You can't say yes to everybody. Here's what I want you to do. Decide who at your table is going to write down the answer to this, okay? And I'm going to give you just a short thing. I want you to like rapid fire answers with this. So somebody who's got a pen that's ready to go and can write down the answers, decide who's going to write it down, and then all 3 of you can participate and answer this question. And I'm going to give you just a short amount of time. You'll know when it's about time up. It'll be real clear. So, you ready? Everybody ready? Got a pen? Some of you got computers out. All right. Why does every church leader need a coach? Come up with as many as you can. How many did you get?
You only need one.
Oh, just one? All right. What'd you come up with?
Because we're not Jesus.
Because you did the whole Sunday school thing right there, didn't you? Whatever the question is, Jesus is the answer, right? Okay, who else? What'd you come up with?
We're not perfect.
Not perfect. Good.
So we can play Jeopardy?
So we can play Jeopardy, yeah. That's always a good reason.
Biblical alignment to the gospel.
Good. Alignment to the gospel. Love it.
Ongoing maturity.
Ongoing maturity.
You learn to ask better questions.
Okay, learn to ask better questions, be a better mentor, discipler. Yeah, good. Accountability.
Pour out so much that's nice to be poured into as well.
Yeah. So as Christian leaders, you're pouring out constantly. This is a chance to receive it as well. Good.
Probably upgrade the quality of your fruit.
Upgrade the quality of fruit. Like it. Love it.
Perspective.
For good perspective. Somebody else speaking into.
Strengthening and empowering to move in their true identity.
Okay, so strengthen and empowering to move into your identity in Christ.
From your identity. Like who
Okay, I'm sorry.
moving from that, walking in it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, out of our identity in Christ, we get to go. What other? Support.
Because leadership is isolating.
By its very nature, leadership is isolating.
If they're not being coached, they're potentially unfit to care for them.
It helps to guard against becoming disqualified. What you're saying, good.
Models it to others.
Good, good. That's what he's asking us. Be an example, model it before others.
Protects us from pride.
Okay,
We have to be humble to hear and be under accountability.
good. So being in accountability protects us from pride. It's huge. I put an appendix at the end. It's appendix 1, as if there's an appendix 2, but there's just one. It's on page 79. And it lists 30 things that from my trainings that I wrote down the different things that people had said. We've got a couple of new ones out of this group here, but several in there that are similar to what we're talking about. So if that's helpful for you, go ahead. Okay, so here's what I want to do at this point is I want to I'm going to give you a 15-minute break. They've got the snacks and some of the drinks and what have you in the back. It's over here in this, I think it's called fireside room, right next door here. And we'll give you 15 minutes, and we'll come back and I'll let you off early actually today as well. So we'll do one more session and then out we'll go, okay? So just take 15 minutes for a break. All right, you that are in here, you're in for a treat. So live from my hometown is an actual news broadcast out of Nashville, Tennessee. It's not my hometown, but it's where I'm living at right now. You won't believe, a lot of people think this is no way, that's not even serious. It's no way it could be true, but this is true. So you're in for a treat. These guys will come running in and be sad they missed. All right, you ever been asked to pray? Now you have a model, a template to go by. All right, I want to be we've been practical. I want to be even more practical as we look into this, how to have a gospel conversation, coaching conversation, and build this out. So this is really critical. It's key to where we want to take this and direction-wise, what you're actually going to be doing. So we're ramping up. You're getting it. You're feeling it. You're seeing how it can be done. Several of you are making comments as we're in the break and such that, like, man, there's really some good conversation. This is not as difficult as I thought. And, I feel free. I feel like I'm learning this. So hopefully we'll continue that escalation out, and you can feel like you're real competent and equipped to coach other people. So let's look at the coaching conversation. I wanted to come up with a phrase that could kind of encapsulate it. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to communicate? So here's what we came up with. Coaching is an intentional gospel conversation with focused discussions about a disciple's personal, spiritual, and missional life. Now let's break that down just a little bit. Really, if you get this right here, you got it, okay? You got it, but we're going to put some flesh on that. This is the skeleton of it. We're going to put some flesh on this thing and make it work. So here it is. Coaching is just, first of all, a conversation. You don't have to be afraid of this. You're just going to have a conversation. You've had those before. Some of you are more free about this than others. I'm not a great conversationalist. I've learned to be. I've forced myself. I've put myself out there. But man, growing up as a little kid, I was afraid to talk to anybody. Even in high school, I remember I would hide behind my locker. And then I was, 6 foot plus, even in high school. And so you can't really hide that much. But, as much as I could, I'm looking for a book. I was trying to be cool about it. I'm looking for a book. I wouldn't cower, but I'm looking for a book. I got my books. I don't even know I don't read those books anyway. So what am I looking for? What I'm doing is avoiding conversation. Some of you, that's really freeing. You can do this. To me, it's not that easy. To have just an easygoing conversation. I have to think about it and be in the zone. And, and some of you that are more introverted are going yeah, I don't even know why I'm here. I'm forced to be here and I don't want to be here and don't ask me to do anything. But it's just a conversation. What you're going to have though is an intentional conversation, different than when people shake your hand at church. When they say everybody stand and shake your hands. I went to a church one time, nobody spoke to us. My 2 boys, my wife and I, in a church full of that age of our kids at the time, 20-somethings. And so we come there for the first time. No one spoke to us except during the handshake time. And that was it. And we're that felt cheap. And those conversations that you have there, hey, how you doing? Whatever. That's how I heard it. Whatever, blah, blah, blah. Because it wasn't intentional. It wasn't really putting yourself out there. You're going oh, hi. But you want to be intentional about your conversation. Not just passing by. So let's meet together and just talk through some things. Let me coach you. Let's go through discipleship. Let's talk about what the word says. Whatever it is, be intentional about it. That's the difference in a coaching and just a casual conversation. Because in casual conversations, you don't have an agenda, you don't have direction, no one's taking the lead. Those are okay. Those are real good, but you need some intentionality when it comes to coaching. So it's an intentional gospel conversation. Now, what do I mean by gospel conversation? It would be as if it was a centerpiece. If something was at the centerpiece of a table and you're having this conversation, it isn't that you're looking at it, seeing it at all angles, and talking about the gospel. It just sits at the center of your table, as it would, and you're having normal conversations, talking about their personal life, their spiritual life, their missional life, whatever the relationships that have taken place. You're just talking about that, but you filter it through the gospel. Meaning, now we need to talk about this. So I'm talking to a couple, and they're about ready to quit ministry. They're so frustrated. And the wife particularly is just like, I'm done. I don't want to do this ever again. And some reason I felt prompted, and I'm a compassionate person. Don't ask my wife if that's true, but I feel like I get that. But at this moment I said, why don't we not talk about that? Just let's talk about the suffering of Christ that he did on this earth when he came in human flesh. And she was all over it. And then I said, and her husband was there with her too, and then I asked her husband and said, how do those come together? Suffering of Christ, the suffering of your wife. And he just put his arm around her. I mean, it's the best thing he could do at that point. I wasn't trying to beat her down or make her feel guilty, but it was perspective. It's helping to see in light of the gospel, light of the good news, what's taking place. See, we're not put on this earth to be happy. Right? We believe that's why we're here, to be happy. We're here to glorify God. That's what we're on this earth for. We're to glorify God and worship him. And that'll include suffering. Now, not it may, it will. We just need to figure out how to navigate that in light of the gospel and how to help other people to see that through and see what's taking place. So that's where that gospel conversation comes in, that piece there. It isn't that you're just talking about the gospel. It's that it is always at the center of your conversation. It's always then going to help filter that through that relationship. So it's an intentional gospel conversation with focused discussions. Now, you're going to focus the discussion on the disciple. You ever had a discussion with somebody and they said, they asked, or you asked them a question, and they just took it off and kept going and kept going and kept going. I mean, they just hijacked the conversation. Be like, so tell me, I'm going to pick on you over here, since you got picked on earlier. They did it. Do you have children? No children? Okay. Where are you from?
Salmon, British Columbia.
In British Columbia? Yeah.
Salmon.
Okay. What do you like to do? Do you have any hobbies?
Hiking and soccer.
Hiking and soccer? Yeah. My sons love to play soccer. They loved it. They loved to take and go out. My son was in the varsity season. They went to the state playoffs. And the coach was kind of crazy though. You probably heard about him, but he coached all over BC in the area here, and loved to salmon fish. And they have salmon fishing. There's a place down in Seattle where you can see the salmon go through there. You know, that's where we took and we sprinkled my uncle's ashes. Was that same place? He was an alcoholic. Had diabetes, lost his leg, and had a car, and he switched it over because he couldn't, it's pedal. It was an old Cadillac, A lot of people have Cadillacs. You've seen those. So what just happened? What just happened? And that's not focused. That's non-focused, okay? So instead, you're going to deal with a person, you can relate to them. You just hit on that. That's an awesome sport. I love that. But you don't take it down. You don't start pulling out slides and showing about your family story and your history and going all kinds. You're just focused on them. That's the difference in a coaching situation. You've got to relate to them. Okay? There has to be a knowledge two-way. It can't just be, I know everything about you, I know all the diagnostics, but you can't know anything about me. That's not going to work. You have to be able to be relatable and relate to them. And they have to know you understand me, you get me, you empathize what's happening. It's like Christ. We have a great high priest who's been touched with all points like we are. We can empathize what we've gone through and can pray for us. So we shared experiences, we've shared life, we've shared whatever, and it would help to relate to them. But you just touch on those and you keep going on. The focus is on the person you're coaching. You understand what I'm saying by that? That's the difference in a coaching than just a normal conversation. You're focused on them. Then you're going to focus on what? When we had a couple of deaths, and my friend T.Y., Pastor T.Y., he and I were going to go play golf in Scotland. And we had planned it. This coming June, we were going to go. On the Friday, post the American Thanksgiving, he went into his bedroom, yelled at his wife for 2 hours. She screamed bloody murder, and then a gun went off. He killed himself. Over what? I get the text. T.Y. dead. Killed himself. What happened? This is my buddy. We're friends enough at least that we're going to go take this trip together. What happened? How come I didn't? His wife says, we had marital problems. What? You had marital problems? I've been with the two of them, had dinner together, laughed. Never knew. Then I got to thinking, I never asked. I never asked him. I just assumed because they're happy and they were friendly and they were hilarious together, everything was fine. I never asked. Thought, something's got to change there. How do you get to the heart of another person? How do you live life? So I think, what could be done with sitting across coffee, having lunch together, any time that people cross paths? What could you do that could prevent this? What could I do intentionally to help TY? It's too late for TY, but the TYs of the future. I need a plan. And I came up with, in a conversation I had with Wayne Grudem, right there at that moment, he said, hey, a healthy church is upward, outward, inward. I said, there it is. It's personal, inward, spiritual, upward, missional, outward. That can be the way that you have communications. So, being the non-conversationalist that I am, and I'm perfectly happy just to remain quiet, but people pick you up at the airport or whatever, and you go, like, what are we going to talk about? Personal. Tell me about your family. And that usually is all you have to ask. And then you can say, well, tell me how you came to faith. Tell me things you're struggling with in your walk with the Lord and in your church or whatever situation, in your ministry. And boom, there you've had a coaching session right there. Just that simple by focusing on personal, spiritual, missional. So this is all it is. It's as simple as that. It's just an intentional, we're meeting together. We're not just happenstance. We're meeting together intentionally. gospel conversation, focused on you. I'm just the deflector and just going to go, yeah, I understand. Psst. Focused discussions on your personal, spiritual, missional life. It's a win. And that's where you go. Okay? So you're having this conversation. You're going to listen, you're going to observe, you're going to watch for what's taking place, you're going to encourage them, support them. Here's where a misunderstanding is. When people think of gospel coach, sometimes I was talking to somebody and said, yeah, that's just soul care, isn't it? I mean, there's that aspect, but it's personal, spiritual, and missional. So at least 50% of the time is done to help move them down the track, to help in whatever issues. Now, again, if it's dealing with, like I was my friend who was dealing with a spina bifida child to be born, which was going to be the second in the home, that's going to hinder, unless he can figure that out, that's going to hinder his leading of that church. And it's going to affect his spiritual walk. You know, all those things intersect and interact and integrate together. That's what we want to look at. That's how we're going. So it's not just paying careful attention to the flock and paying careful attention to yourself. So I have a little space for you there in that chapter. What are some good coaching questions? Okay, so come up with some good coaching questions that would follow up with the answer, what makes a good coaching question? What'd you come up with? What's a good question? Help us. I'm going to write some of these down as you give it to me. What a good question. How are you? Is that what you said?
What are your hopes and ambitions?
What are your hopes and ambitions? Okay, good.
How would a bigger, clearer view of God illuminate this situation you're in?
Man, you're going deep. How would a bigger, clearer vision of God illuminate this situation you're facing? Okay, great.
Were you facing tension in your life?
Where are you facing tension in your life? Good.
That could lead to a personal or spiritual or missional conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes you have to clarify that. If they know you're holistically looking, if you're trying to go down, and of course you want to leave it broad enough where it can fit any one of those categories. Let them decide.
What are your biggest fears?
Okay, good. What are your biggest fears?
What keeps you up at night?
Ah,
Variation on that.
what keeps you up at night? What makes a good question?
It needs to be open-ended, not a yes or no.
Okay, open-ended, not yes or no.
Need to be relevant to the topic at hand.
Sorry, I missed you.
Relevant to the topic at hand.
Okay, sure. Got to be relevant to the topic at hand, like not just some random. Good.
Concerned about hitting on one of those three areas, either personal, spiritual, or missional.
And sometimes those intersect. You're not sure where that fits, isn't it? Yeah. So finding that space of personal, spiritual, missional.
The answer opens up the opportunity to give another cast on this question.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it helps to draw out from them, gets them going down the road. Agenda.
The same thing, just kind of gently nudges them down a layer in the conversation.
Okay, good. People will tell you whatever you want, they think you want to hear until you just really have to put yourself out there and you have to keep putting yourself out there and keep asking. And they'll learn. And we're gonna practice some listening skills here in just a moment and put this into motion. So here, let's talk about some asking questions. As they discuss their problem, put yourself in the shoes of those that they're trying to lead. I was reviewing a document that was written by someone just yesterday, and I've tried to put myself in the shoes of a church pastor who is reading this and trying to make a decision. So then I was able to ask questions. Is this clear what you're asking of the church pastor? That's a good question. I'm not sure if it is. How did I come to ask that question? I just put myself in the recipient of that letter. Would it be clear to me to be able to do that. And do the same thing in a situation like if you were a spouse of this person that's having this difficulty, or a person in the church that you're trying to lead, and just put yourself in their position and try to envision what would be the questions you would ask, and ask those questions. The other thing you want to do is listen longer than you think is necessary. Just don't be afraid of silence. Don't be afraid of it. Let them, wait for them to. And if they tell you this, that's a good question. It's an indication it's a good question, A. But the other thing is, they're not sure how to answer that. And they're just using those words to say, I'm not sure what I'm saying. So don't say, well, in other words, just let it sit for a second, okay? Let it sit, let them think about it, and then let them process. Use the comments, tell me more, and what else, to encourage and explore other options and choices they might have, okay? And guys or men are terrible at this. You ask them a question, they go, here's the answer. All right, let's go on. But if you explore it further, you say, well, what else? Well, it could be this way. Well, what else? What else? And you get about 4 or 5. They say, well, of those, which one do you think is the best one? Well, number 3. Well, that's not the one you started with, that you said forcefully. But they're just going like, well, I was just giving you an answer. Be willing to dig and listen and be patient with that. Absolutely. You're 100% right. Intuition is right on that. You've got to know them. And that's part of that shepherding piece, is you know your sheep, you know your disciple. You know what they're dealing with. You know what they need. At least have an... And if you don't know, you're going to investigate that. When I first started coaching this guy who had spina bifida thing, I didn't know how to spell spina bifida. And then I got, well, I should know about this. What the debilitations of this? What takes place here? What's happened? So I got to know it. I wanted to know them so I could have a better grasp of what was going on in their life. That's good. I want to suggest this model here, put together by PhD Judy Brownell, this Hurrier model of listening skills now. And basically what it says this is, if you can think of like understanding and integrating and evaluating is like the center of this, and on the other ends is hearing it, remembering, and responding. But really, in the moment, what you're trying to do is understand, interpret, and evaluate. Here's how she explained this idea of listening is, be hearing what's taking place. Be there. Hear what's taking place. Listen intently. I love to take notes. You can do that either in your computer, or you can do it on notes, whatever. But you're going like, oh, that's what they're saying. I'm going to capture this. And me now, I can type about 10 words a minute. So it takes me longer. So I would I'm not going to put a lot of words in here. I'm going to capture the most salient thing. And so I'm listening for it. Okay, it's that. Wait a minute, I'm typing. Okay, I got it. And that helped me to listen, is to pull that together so you're hearing what's taking place. You're not only hearing the words, but you're, as you mentioned, you're watching body language. You're seeing the nonverbal cues take place. And then you're understanding. And you're helping them to, okay, so what you said is, what I heard you say is this. So you're trying to understand that. And by the way, that's a good way for them to know you're engaged in the conversation, as opposed to just, you're off. And they're not going to be talking. I know you've been in conversations, because we can't keep 100% focus 100% of the time. It's not possible. So you're going to miss some stuff. But you've been in those conversations, you go like, I have no idea what they just said. There's words, but I have no idea what took place. But to help that, you're going like, what are they trying to say? You're trying to melt it down. And they go like, what I heard you say was this. Is that right? Absolutely. Or that was, no, this variation, this perspective. It can also help them to hear it back as it's being rephrased back to them, right? So what you said is, and they hear back and they go like, I've said that sometimes, and they go like, well, when I hear it said by you, it doesn't sound like a good idea, does it? And you don't answer. You don't have to answer it. They've already answered it. So you're understanding, you're remembering. And this is important to understand. There are people who remember really well, others who write down really well. I'm of the latter category. I remember a lot of stuff, but if you're coaching multiple people, sometimes I'm not sure, did I hear that from Mark or Jim or Joe, or who did I hear that from? Just make sure you jot down, take notes. I'll show you how to do that in a program. But remember what's taking place and go on. I was coaching one guy and he goes like, God, you remember everything. And I said, I don't remember anything, but I know where it is and I can get it and capture it. And again, I'll show you how I do it. You can choose how you want to do it. So remembering, you're interpreting, you're listening. What are they saying? What's the tone? What's happening here? What are the words saying? Where are they distracted? I was talking with someone and I kept hearing a theme that was taking place. So in interpreting, you're not just interpreting that one single thing. You're interpreting in light of the whole context, what they're saying. And I said, you know what? I'm seeing a theme that's kind of running through this whole thing. Is this evident in your life? Is this something that you've faced in the past? Yeah. And then you start asking questions on that. But you can see, you can interpret what's going on. Then you're evaluating all that's taken place. You're responding back to them. Back channeling is simply saying, yeah, oh. That you're there, especially if you're on a phone, a cell phone. They could be talking and you're gone, been gone for a long time. I was talking with somebody on my cell phone. My wife jumped into my truck and backed out. My Bluetooth picked it up on the truck, and I lost them. I mean, they're gone. Was that you, Ron? Yeah, okay. So they're gone. And so my wife and you had a conversation from the truck, and she found out some things she didn't want to hear. But anyway, there was. But be careful of this. So that back panel is just yes, listen. All right, here's listening 101. This is just real basic. Okay, nothing special here. Maintain a posture of hearing and remove all distractions. Just, don't try to answer email and update Facebook posts and what have you. I've seen people do that. Listen longer than you think is necessary. We talked about that. Show respect for them as you're listening. Be in the moment. This is not in the moment. Please. The phones. If you're having a conversation, gosh, if you got to leave it in the car, if you got to run over it, whatever you got to do, not to be distracted, you got to go like, I respect you enough to have this conversation without going, wait here, let me do a selfie. Rephrase their thoughts. Watch for verbal cues. Give them feedback without interrupting. And so, talk about their feelings. Like if they say, man, I'm really struggling with, or I'm really angry at, or whatever. I mean, you got to acknowledge that. Acknowledge that feeling, even if you're not you don't have to validate it and go like, you should be mad. But you acknowledge it. Man, I'm sorry that you're feeling that way. Tell me more about that. Let's process through that. Defer judgment. Don't say, that's the dumbest idea you've ever had. Tell me more. Ask open-ended probing questions, okay? You're not just yes or no all the way through. Let me break it up here. Here's how not to ask questions. All right, you get the idea how not to ask questions? Not just going after it. I mean, you're in the moment. You're hearing, analyzing, interpreting. You're pulling in. You're trying to understand what's taking place and trying to help them to process them. Here's what really excites me is that really listening can be an act of the gospel, just displayed in very listening gauge. I preached at a church one time in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I found myself like staring. It was like right in the center, staring at one person. And I go, like, why am I looking over here? Because this person was like, they were like smiling and going, yes. And, they're just like being real demonstrative on their responses. I'm like, I got to quit doing that. It's going to look like, it just looks strange. But I kept looking back there because it was like they were affirming what was being said. It's an act of grace extended to another person. Extending that grace, you're saying, you don't have to listen to you, but I choose to listen. God does not have to listen to us, but he chooses to. It's an act of love to care for another. Because you're not just listening to go like, sucks for you. You're saying what? Let's talk that through. Let's work this through. It's an act of compassion. Jesus saw the sheep without a shepherd and said he was moved with compassion because they were sheep, like sheep without a shepherd. It's an act of Holy Spirit partnership. So you're listening to them, you're listening to the Spirit at the same time, working that out together. And sometimes you don't know what to say. You don't know what to ask. Listen, what's the Spirit saying? Sorry. So let's practice this, okay? Let's practice this. So turn to ask each other. You just have one person be the one who's being asked, the other person listening, the other person giving feedback. Ask this question: what are the top challenges you're facing in your life? Practice these 8 principles. Paying attention, hearing them, trying to help understand, focus on them, don't be distracted, staying in where they are and trying to ask follow-up questions. Just be really good at listening at this, okay? They give you about 5 minutes. One person choose to do so, one person ask, and the other person observe. Okay, so I want to wrap up today with this section on what it means to coach like a shepherd. And I want us to look at from a mind, it's a mindset, it's a perspective, it's a commitment. You can get into all the details of what that would mean, but I think more than anything, it's going to be attitudinally expressed as opposed to, like, I don't know if I got all the technical details about it. It's more of an attitude, a posture towards how you shepherd, how you care for another person. So let's take a peek at it. There's some pushback on church leadership as it takes to shepherding. There are some who believe that it's a CEO model. Quite frankly, I would have aspired towards a CEO model, but it's not mine to make a choice. I have to choose what the Scripture has taught and commands and kind of leads people to lead the church. It's done not as a cattle driver with an electric probe, but it's done as a shepherd. And so that's what we have to go by. And so these terms mean simply to shepherd, to care. Acts 20:28, the word care, as I mentioned before, is to care, to shepherd the church, to pastor. That word is also used of pastoring. And so if you can get that mindset, this is my responsibility to care for, to shepherd, to pastor other people. This is the posture that you take. It's the posture Jesus took as he called himself the Good Shepherd. Tim Whitmer, indebted to. Tim is the one that kind of gave us the know, feed, lead, and protect way to communicate this. Tim wrote 2 books. The first one was the Shepherd Leader, and the second one, which is awesome, is Shepherd Leader at Home. So he took those principles of know your family, feed them, lead them, and protect them. And I really like that book. And so this we pull it off. Tim Laniak is probably the foremost authority on shepherding. He wrote into D.A. Carson's line of books, and he calls it his provision, guidance, and protection. So provision would be feeding, guidance, leading, protection is protect. And the piece that he's missing here that I wanted to include with Whitmer's was the idea of knowing. You've got to, you mentioned that we got to know who we're coaching. You want to really get to know them and understand who they are. And I do a diagnostic with them. I'll do 20 intake questions. And it isn't so I just want to get a bunch of information. I want to know them. And so I sit down with guys who are leading church planting across Canada. And I'll ask them, how'd you come to faith? I mean, some really interesting conversations that we'll have. It's people like, well, I was in India and I walked and I ran. And we're like, what? No, wait a minute, backtrack. You were where? And so just some strange conversations that come about and when they came to faith and things they're struggling with and who they, when they got married and where they met. And, just simple things like that that help you to understand and know them a little bit more intimately so you can help lead them and guide them and protect them in ways that other people you wouldn't normally find out. But Laniak talked about shepherding, just this little short clip.
The world is facing an incredible leadership crisis. The Bible is a resource book about leadership. Abraham, Moses, and David were all shepherds before they became leaders of God's people, and for good reason. Our understanding of the work of shepherds is going to fall into three categories: provision, protection, and guidance.
So Jesus, as the chief shepherd, would know, feed, lead, protect his disciples. That's what we're seeking to know them, feed them, lead them, protect them. Here's what it looks like in the way we look at this. So again, this is a posture of, I'm in a shepherding relationship with another person. You're your coach, you're shepherding them. Again, you're not beating them, you're not probing them, you're leading ahead of them. You are taking that way, and you got to get to know them. So the first one is to know the sheep, relate to them personally. You feed them with the Word of God, the person of Jesus Christ, and areas where they have need, whatever that happens to be. Could be in marriage, it could be in health, it could be, whatever the need is in their life, you're helping to feed them in those areas. And you don't have to be the one, by the way, you don't have to be the one that's giving them the information. They're responsible. They're taking responsibility for themselves, and they're taking the action. So you're like, I got to be a researcher, I got to be a writer, I got to be a coach, I got to be a teacher. No, you place it upon them. It's their responsibility to go investigate and learn this stuff. But occasionally you'll have some resources for them that will be helpful, but for the most part, you're not passing along resources and content. But you can incite that. Like, would that be a good thing to look up and explore? Yeah, probably should. I shared a big, long document that I had with Chris on assessment stuff that some guy from Redeemer Presbyterian had put together that I happen to have in my computer. I said, boom, boom, send it on to him just as maybe some information to follow through. Then you're going to lead them. You're going to lead them by investing in their life, okay? Sacrificially, you're willing to make that sacrifice. As I told you, it's not like we're just hanging out for a while. You're making an investment in them personally. Overseeing every aspect of their life, okay? Really investing, really overseeing. You're really caring about every aspect of what's taking place, and then guiding with Spirit-empowered discernment. So you're listening, giving them direction, you're prompting them. You're not pushing them. You're just asking them questions that maybe the Spirit has given you discernment in. Then finally, you're protecting. And we think of shepherding, and here's the pushback. The pushback of the idea of shepherding is, it's just a real soft, it's like, you think of like, it's not forceful, it's not strong, it's just this pastoral thing, but that's not what it is at all. Shepherd had to be on guard, on watch, stay up late, fight wolves, brave the elements, stand before the sheep from a cliff and try to get them to go another. This is part of protecting. And how do we do that? We do that with compassion, like Jesus spoke of with the crowd. He looked on them with compassion, like a sheep without a shepherd. Comforting with hope in the gospel. I mentioned earlier, my brother committed suicide. When he committed suicide, I was in England at the time. And he was texting me and telling me basically goodbye in kind of a riddle form. And they asked me to do preach his sermon, his funeral. And on the plane ride, I prepared his sermon, his final thing, and I didn't know, what am I going to do? And somehow God gave me the idea of hope. Hope. Our hope isn't here. Our hope is eternally. And it was helpful for me. I mean, it was literally, I got done. I folded up. In just a short couple hours, I finished and stood up to say, there's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. There's our hope. This world isn't hope. What we experienced was hopeless. What we experienced was pain and suffering. But this isn't all we're hoping for. That is. And that's sometimes it's kind of like, okay, lift your eyes up. Lift your eyes up. Get off your pain, what you're experiencing right now. This isn't the rest of the world. It's eternal. And that's a part of that lifting up and giving hope. Then finally, you're going to fight for their good. Wolves will come in. It says, Acts 20, 28 through 30, 29 and 30 talk about wolves will come in, rising up from among you, drawing men after themselves. You can tell a wolf when he draws other people after himself rather than pushing towards the chief shepherd. A good shepherd on this world, earthly man, woman, will lead them to that good shepherd, Jesus. A wolf will lead them to themselves and say, follow me, I'm it. So we want to protect them, fight for their good. So let's again, in kind of a short order form, what are some qualities of an effective coach in any arena of life? Okay, so we're just going to blast these out. You speak up, and we're going to hear from each of you. What characteristics describe an effective coach? Caring. Okay, great. You notice I played that off? Couldn't hear. Good listener, good. Experience. Does that mean old?
Yeah.
Just checking.
They see your potential.
Okay. Knowledge. Good. What else?
Inspiring.
Good. Aspiring.
Asks good questions.
Good question answer. Asker. Okay.
Someone that listens to the Spirit's prompting.
Spirit-filled, spirit-led person. Good. What else?
Self-awareness.
I missed it.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Okay, good.
Secure in their position of Christ.
Brings the best out of others.
Generous.
Sacrificial.
Good.
Patient.
Patient. Humble. We've got a great list. How many of those relate back to that list that we looked at? What are qualities of a gospel coach? You can almost mirror those on. Not exact, but you can kind of look at that. What does it look like to be? So the things that we have a perception for is seen through this whole idea of how we're going to shepherd. And again, it's a mindset, it's an attitude, it's a posture that you place before others. It isn't a second role. See, so don't let the church tell you that. Don't let people in the church tell you that shepherding other people is a secondary role. That's if you can't be a real pastor or a preaching pastor or a prophet or a king, or then you got to be a shepherd. Don't let the church tell you that. Jesus was a good shepherd. Go with that one. That's what we're called to do, and don't let them diminish that. We shepherd by understanding what's beneath the what. So it's not enough just to experience this. What are you dealing with? I'm dealing with anger. Oh, we need to confess that. We need to repent of that. We ask why. Why? Why? And it can dig down and help to understand underneath all of that is a deep insecurity, deep sense of pride, or some issue that's life. You want to dig beneath it and find out what's there, what's really there. Don't just listen for what's there, but dig down deep because you care. And I want to kind of show you the difference between advisor and a shepherd and help you understand this. Because it's easy to be an advisor. I've been asked to consult with churches before, and quite frankly, I don't like to do it. Because, first of all, they don't want to hear the truth. They really don't want to, what I perceive is, the truth. Okay. I perceive it to be true. It's probably true, right? It's a joke. You don't want to hear anything that's negative or maybe could be changed. A better way to do this is walk with them through this. What are your goals for this? What does it look like? So let's kind of compare these real quick. An advisor is I and you. I suggest you. A shepherd is we. And if you get nothing else, grasp that. It's we. Let us dig into our problem. What is our problem? Your finances, for instance, or whatever issue. But you're taking ownership of that. You see the difference? For an advisor, it's content-based. A shepherd, it's process-based, meaning here's how to fix you. That's content versus let's walk through this together. Advisor would be free flow of words. In other words, what comes to mind, you're just going to say. Where a shepherd is going to filter, edit your words, hold back, trying to draw from them. You're not just speaking. Advisor would be solution driven. Here's your answer. Here's how you get it done. Some of you have been probably tempted, even while we're doing some practice sessions, right? You've been tempted to go like, well, here's what you need to do right here, as opposed to being transformation driven. Okay, what do we want to have done? What's the end goal to this process? Advisor is what's called speed counseling. That's what Ed Welch calls it. Speed counseling. So you ever been on speed dating? They didn't have those things when I was around, but go real quick. Okay, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need. Here's what you. That's an advisor. A shepherd instead would be hiking with a friend. Okay, you see that you're catching what I'm saying. I don't have to read all these, but it's you together. You're committing to whatever issue is taking place here. And you're coming alongside them and pulling in and getting near. Coaching provides accountability. Let's talk about this for a second. Provides accountability. So part of the coaching process is, what can I help you in your steps of action? And sometimes I'll just call it action steps, action items, as opposed to accountability, because people like accountability, that word. But it's action items, what you need to do. So if you look at this is a body of water behind me and this bridge. And the goal of the bridge is what? Don't think too hard. And the answer is not Jesus. What's the goal? To get across to the other side, A to B. It's just basically get across. And what gives it accountability? What gives it integrity, that bridge? You see, it's the pillars, right? The pillars are down on the ground. Some engineers figured out how deep, how wide, what composition, how they're attached to the bridge, what the steel's made of. They figured it all out. It's going to hang it across. And that bridge isn't going to fall. Where Mark Birch spent some time, and I grew up nearby, was a place called the Royal Gorge Bridge. It's the world's highest suspension bridge. meaning it's attached to the mountain on one side, it's attached to the mountain on the other. There's nothing in between. And it costs like $50 to drive across. They should give you $50 if you go across. That's what I'm saying. But there's no accountability. There's no for sure the thing's going to hang tight. But the pillars give it that. Here's the problem. We can have accountability without a gospel focus means we've got just pillars. So if you're just in an accountability relationship without any kind of what's the end goal, what's this process, you're missing out on it. It becomes self-righteous at that point. It looks like this, like a bridge to nowhere with awesome pillars. If you're in a relationship of accountability, here's just kind of some thoughts I had. You're not going to be defensive. You can't be defensive when someone brings something up. Hey, I've noticed, just a little bit irritated lately. What do you mean by that? Exactly that. Not deflecting. In other words, when they're asked a direct question, they're not asked, they go like, well, here's what I was coaching a guy and he kept deflecting. Every time just sort of shoo, shoo, shoo. Well, so finally I just had him straightforward. I said, can I ask you a really difficult question? Sure. What sin is in your life that you don't want to address right now? What do you mean by that? He was sleeping with a woman in the church. He was a pastor. So, is that deflecting? Not dishonest. So this same guy, I talked with his elders, helped walk them through that whole transition period. And his elder said, we asked him questions. Every week we'd ask him these questions. How did he answer them? He answered them correctly. No, 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 no. He was being dishonest. Not distant. You can't do it from a distance. You've got to be up front. It's with people. You can't be accountable to people you see once a year. In your life, can see it, can watch you, go like, I noticed something about you. Not demeaning. So again, the accountability isn't like, I'm gonna find it, man. I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna nail you. I'm like, I don't need you as my accountability. That's not the person you want in your life. The person that's gonna lift you up. It's gonna expose it, gonna heal it, gonna give you time and help you recover through that. Not demanding, not deceiving, get the point. 5 basics: focus on your need for the gospel and respond to grace. And rather than asking the typical questions, ask the question, where do you need the gospel in your life right now? Or where are you finding it most difficult to follow Christ? And then apply the gospel. I mean, you just need to admit your need for the gospel in your life. Utilize people who have that regular contact, people who are not under your supervision. This was this guy again. And the people that were asking him the questions, holding him accountable, were under his supervision. Well, they're not going to press too hard, right? You got to have some that are above and some beside. You can include those under your supervision, but they can't be the totality of the people you're held accountable to. Encourage your asking hard questions. And utilize questions not the same every time. Because you learn how to, okay, I know what to anticipate. I make a file for each person for areas of what they call either action, like I said, action steps, action items, accountability, whatever you want to do. But I make a file for each one. And then I can pull those up each time. And then I'll list those. Hey, you asked me to hold you accountable, or you asked to review these. Again, it doesn't matter what term you use. But you bring those up. You're being a help to them. You're not being a pest. You're just being a help to them. Kind of like, you asked me, so, And you're not the authority in their life. Make sure that everything that's significant, you go like, look, can we add this to your action items? Oh yeah, that'd be good. It's controlled by the disciple. And so you're not imposing on them and saying, I'm going to hold you accountable for wearing a Jesus hat every day. Like, if you want me to hold you accountable to that, I'll do that. But so you're not imposing on. It's monitored by the coach. Closing, let's look at this for the day. I put it in a different version just so it's not mundane, but that we can refresh our mind as we think about this. So guard yourself and God's people. Feed and shepherd God's flock, his church, purchased with his own blood, over which the Holy Spirit has appointed you as elders. Again, Paul was speaking at that time to elders there in Ephesus. I know that false teachers, like vicious wolves, will come in among you after I leave, not sparing the flock. Even some men from your own group will rise up and distort the truth in order to draw a following. We need shepherds in people's lives, and God has ordained that that is the posture that we take. And so in coaching, that's what you act as. It's gospel coach, subtitled, Shepherding Leaders to Glorify God. It's that posture of shepherding. You're caring for them holistically, fully, completely, sacrificially, committedly. You're involved in their life at all areas. And you knowing that, it will come. If you're in Christian service at any level, there's a verse in Zechariah 13:7. Jesus quoted it. And it's this: strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Who would Satan go after? The front domino. That's who. Gets that front domino, and the rest of them fall. Jesus spoke about that. He referred back to that when he's talking about my disciples. You'll all forsake me. Peter said, not I. And yet he did 3 times before the rooster crowed twice. We got to be on guard. And we need shepherds in our life. We need shepherds. We need to be shepherds, coaches in other people's lives, to help care for this flock, because trouble is coming. And he's left us to care for, to pay careful attention to the flock in which he's entrusted us. And this is the way we're seeking to do that. So, Father, we thank you that we could explore from your words what it would mean to make disciples, to develop leaders, to protect and encourage, to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry and do it in a way that brings glory and honor to you. Oh, we fail you. We're frail. We falter. We are self-absorbed at times, and then at times we're insecure. We don't think we belong anywhere, but you have declared that we are yours. And most of all, that you are a shepherd and we are your sheep. And you'll take this flock, and then not one of them will be lost. So we pray, Lord, that make us faithful. Look to you as the chief shepherd, and that we may shepherd others and glorify you in all that we do. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, as we close up here, half hour early, by the way, just so you know, we will come in tomorrow at, I got the timer here, 9 o'clock, and we're going to do the one session. We're going to do a practice. We're going to do a practice session, and then we're going to, then you're going to practice. So we'll do a demonstration, looking for a volunteer, by the way, and then we will let you practice and put it into motion. Come all together, and by the end of this, tomorrow, you should be able to figure it out. I'm going to show you how I ask questions ahead of time, how to respond, how to keep a file on that, how to make it real simple so that you've got it right at your fingertips. And if you get that figured out, that practice, it makes coaching a number of people real easy to pull off. Okay? All right, we'll see you tomorrow.